My wife secretly sold my family's $350, $0 inheritance to fund her affair with her boss, then turned around and sued me for half of our joint savings during our divorce. I never saw it coming. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never saw it coming. Honestly, I thought I knew Laura, my wife of 10 years, better than anyone. We had our ups and downs, sure, but I always believed we had a solid, if not perfect, marriage. That was until I found out she was cheating on me with her boss, Mark. The shocking part. She sold off our family inheritance, a $350, $0 chunk of money to fund her affair. It's like everything I believed about her and us was a lie. It all started subtly. I noticed her phone was more secretive than usual, locking it, hiding the screen when I walked by, deleting messages. She'd get defensive if I asked who she was texting or why she was so distracted. She'd brush it off, say she was stressed at work or she was just tired, but I knew something was off. Then there were the late nights, the quick excuses about client dinners or working late. I trusted her, but I also felt the distance growing. One night I decided to check her phone when she was out of the house. I didn't plan to do it, just a moment of curiosity, but what I found changed everything. Her messages with Mark were obvious enough, flirty, suggestive, talking about their plans to meet up. But what hit me like a punch in the gut was the amount of money she'd been secretly moving. I saw transfers to her personal account, large sums that I didn't recognize. It was clear she'd been planning something big, and I couldn't imagine what. I started digging further. I found bank statements hidden in her email drafts. She'd been funneling money out of the inheritance, little by little. Over months, she'd sold off parts of our inheritance, our family's legacy, without telling me. I couldn't believe it. She was using that money to fund her affair, to buy herself a new life with Mark. The betrayal cut so deep I could breathe. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach every time I thought about it. That's when I decided I had to confront her. I couldn't keep pretending I didn't know. I needed the truth, and I needed to hear it from her face. One afternoon, I came home earlier than usual, hopping for a quiet moment. I saw her car parked in the driveway and my heart started pounding. I quietly entered the house, trying to stay calm. I found her in the bedroom, packing a small bag. She looked surprised, annoyed even when I walked in. "Laura, what the hell are you doing?" I asked, voice trembling. She rolled her eyes, that bitchy smirk on her face. "Packing? I'm going to see my sister. Why do you care?" She shot back, acting like I was overreacting. I could see the defiance in her eyes, the way she was clutching her purse like she was hiding something. I pressed harder, showing her the bank statements and the text messages I'd found. Her face paled for a moment, then she quickly recovered. "Oh, it's nothing, just some stupid money transfers. You're overthinking," she said dismissively. But I knew better. I saw the truth in her eyes. She was lying, and she knew it. The pieces clicked in my head. She'd been secretly selling our inheritance, using the money for her affair, and now she was trying to cover her tracks. I was furious. How could she do this? How could she betray me and our family like that? The confrontation escalated quickly. She snapped at me, calling me paranoid and accusing me of spying on her. She insisted she was just stressed, that Mark was just a friend, that I was imagining things. But I could see through her lies. I was hit with a mixture of anger, sadness, and betrayal all at once. I couldn't believe she'd be so selfish, so cruel, to destroy our life for some secret affair. I felt like I was losing my mind. That night, I lay awake replaying everything. The signs had been there, I guess. Her secretive behavior, the money, the lies. But I refused to believe it until I saw it with my own eyes. The woman I married was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. And the worst part, she sold off our family's future, our stability. All for her own selfish pleasure. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let her get away with this. I had to figure out what to do next, but I was already feeling the cold weight of betrayal pressing down on me. The next few days were a blur of shock and anger. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her packing her bag, the way she looked at me with that smug, dismissive expression. I started digging even deeper into her accounts, trying to piece together just how much she'd taken from us, how much she'd sold off of our inheritance. The more I looked, the worse it got. Turns out, she'd liquidated most of the $350, $0 over the last year, funneling it into various accounts, buying designer clothes, expensive trips, even setting aside a stash of cash for herself to run away with Mark. I found out she'd been telling her friends she was stressed at work, but behind the scenes, she was planning her escape with her boss. That's when I realized she'd been lying about everything, about her job, her feelings, her plans. She'd been pretending to be this hardworking, loyal wife, but behind my back she was orchestrating her own betrayal. It made me furious but also incredibly hurt. I trusted her with everything, and she'd spat on that trust like it was nothing. One night, I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I needed to confront her again, this time with everything laid out on the table. I called her on her cell, pretending to be calm, but inside I was boiling. When she answered, I told her I knew everything about the sale of the inheritance, the affair, the lies. Her voice instantly changed. She snapped, "You're crazy, James. You're just jealous. Mark and I are just friends. You're overreacting because you're insecure." I told her I had the bank statements, the transfer records, everything. Her reaction, she laughed, that bitter, condescending laugh she always used when she thought she was winning. "You're so paranoid. You always think the worst." Honestly, James, I don't know what you want from me. I've been working so hard to keep this marriage afloat, and now you're accusing me of selling our future. That's just ridiculous. I wanted to scream at her, to shake her and tell her how much she'd hurt me, but I kept my cool. Instead, I told her she needed to come home so we could talk properly. She refused at first, saying she didn't want to deal with my accusations, but I was firm. I told her she had two choices: come home and face the truth, or leave and face the consequences. The next day she did come back, but only after a lot of back and forth. When she finally sat down with me, her face was cold, her eyes defiant. I laid everything out: the bank statements, the texts, the money she'd sold off, the plans with Mark. She tried to deny it all, of course, insisting she was innocent, that I was making it all up, but I had proof. And her reaction? She got defensive, started throwing blame my way. Said I was controlling, that I didn't trust her, that I was paranoid. I felt a wave of despair mixed with rage. This wasn't just about money or the affair anymore. It was about the fact that I'd been betrayed so thoroughly, so heartlessly. I asked her directly, "Did you sell our inheritance? Did you use that money to fund your affair?" Her answer, she looked me straight in the eye and lied, "Of course not. You're imagining things. I don't know what you're talking about." That's when I realized she was never going to be honest, not really. She was a master at lying, at covering her tracks, at pretending everything was fine. I knew then I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. The woman I married was gone, replaced by someone who only cared about herself. I was drowning in betrayal, and I had no idea how to fix this, or even if I wanted to. All I knew was that I couldn't keep living in this lie anymore. I felt helpless, yet somehow determined. I had to decide whether to fight for my marriage, to try to save what little was left, or to cut her out of my life entirely. The pain was overwhelming, but I also knew I couldn't let her get away with destroying our future. I had to think carefully about what my next move would be, knowing that whatever I chose, this was only the beginning of a long, painful journey. For the next couple of weeks, I was caught in a whirlwind of emotions: anger, betrayal, confusion, and a strange sense of numbness. I couldn't focus on anything else. Every day felt like walking through a fog, haunted by the images of her packing her bags, the lies she told, and the money she'd stolen from us. I kept replaying everything in my mind, trying to find some way to make sense of it all. How could she do this? How could she sell off our inheritance, the very thing our family had worked for generations, just to fund her affair? It was like she'd thrown our entire future away for some fleeting pleasure. I knew I couldn't just sit around and do nothing. I had to get some clarity, some sense of control in this chaos. So I decided to hire a private investigator. I needed to see if she was truly with Mark, or if she was just lying to cover her tracks. The pie was discreet, professional, and within a week I had the proof I needed. She was indeed with Mark, spending nights at his apartment, staying out late, hiding her tracks even more. It was a slap in the face. I'd been blind, believing she was just stressed or working late. Meanwhile, she was living a double life and I was paying the price. Once I had the evidence, I knew I had to confront her again, but this time with everything laid out on the table. I called her, told her I knew everything, and demanded she come over. When she arrived, I was ready. I laid out the photos, the bank statements, the texts. Her face twisted into a mixture of anger and panic. She tried to deny everything, claiming her affair with Mark was just innocent, that she was under a lot of stress, and that I was making a big deal out of nothing. I lost my temper then. I told her that her lies weren't going to work anymore, that I'd seen enough. I asked her why she'd sold our inheritance, our family's legacy, without telling me. She scoffed, trying to spin some story about how she was doing it for us, that she wanted us to be comfortable, that she was saving us from financial trouble. That was the biggest lie of all. She'd been planning this for months, probably longer, and she'd lied about everything. Worst part was her attitude. She was so dismissive, like she didn't care about the damage she'd caused. She kept insisting she was the victim, that I was overreacting, that I was controlling and paranoid. I looked at her and thought, how did I not see this coming? How did I miss all these signs? I'd always believed she was just a bit stressed, maybe a little distant, but I never imagined she'd betray me so completely. I felt like my entire world was collapsing. And then she threw me a curveball. She said, "You know what, James? Maybe we need some time apart. Maybe I need to figure out what I want." That was her way of saying she was leaving, or at least trying to buy herself some time. I couldn't believe she'd even suggest that. After everything, she still refused to take responsibility. Instead, she looked at me with this cold, bitchy expression, like she was already planning her escape. That night, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the wall, feeling numb. I realized I'd been giving her the benefit of the doubt for too long. She was a liar, a thief, and a cheat. I felt the sting of betrayal deep in my chest. All those years, all the trust I put in her, ruined in a matter of months. I wondered if I'd ever be able to trust anyone again. But beneath all that, there was a flicker of clarity. I knew I couldn't keep living like this, caught in her web of lies and deception. I started thinking about my options. Should I fight for the marriage? Should I just cut my losses and walk away? I wasn't sure yet, but I knew one thing. I was done being the fool. I was tired of being manipulated, used, and betrayed. I deserved better than this. I deserved honesty, respect, something she clearly had no intention of giving me. So I began planning my next move. I started gathering more proof, thinking about legal advice about how to protect what little I had left. I realized I had to be smart, strategic. If she was willing to sell off our inheritance, she'd do anything to cover her tracks. I couldn't trust her anymore, not with our money, not with my heart. The betrayal had cut so deep, I knew I'd need time to heal. But I also knew I'd never forget what she did. That's the thing about betrayal. It leaves scars that don't fade easily. The more I thought about everything, the clearer it became that I had to take control of the situation. I couldn't just sit around and wait for her to decide what she wanted to do. She'd already made her choice, and it was clear she was trying to disappear into her new life with Mark. I decided I needed legal advice, not just to understand my rights, but to protect what was left of our assets. I contacted a lawyer, someone who specialized in family law and financial disputes. Sitting across from her, explaining the situation, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. I knew I had to act fast if I wanted to salvage any part of what was ours. My lawyer told me that I had a solid case for recovering the money. The fact that she'd secretly sold off our inheritance, without my knowledge or consent, was a clear breach of trust and legal obligation. She'd taken a huge chunk of our joint assets, and I had proof of that. The lawyer warned me that she might try to hide or move money, so I needed to act quickly. I also learned that I had grounds to file for divorce, especially given her infidelity and financial misconduct. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but I knew it was necessary. I couldn't keep living in this nightmare. I started to prepare myself emotionally and financially. I knew this was going to be a long, messy process. I also kept digging into her accounts. More hidden transfers, new secret accounts, anything she might be using to hide her tracks. I had to be thorough. Meanwhile, she was still acting like nothing was wrong, throwing tantrums, trying to manipulate the situation, and insisting she was the victim of my paranoia, of my controlling nature. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I saw her for what she was, a liar and a thief. One day she confronted me again, her tone sharp, her face contorted with anger. "James, I don't know what your problem is. I've done everything for us. You're just accusing me of stuff because you're insecure. Maybe I should leave. Maybe I deserve better than this." Her words hit me like a punch. It was obvious she was trying to turn this around, make me feel guilty, make me question my own sanity. But I wasn't falling for it. I told her straight, "You sold off our inheritance, Laura. You lied, you cheated, and you betrayed me in the worst way possible. I don't trust you anymore, and I'm going to make sure you're held accountable." Her reaction, she scoffed and rolled her eyes. "Whatever, James, you're just bitter because I'm leaving. I don't care about your stupid inheritance. I just want my freedom." That's when I realized she was already planning her escape, trying to spin the story so that she was the victim. I knew I had to act fast if I was going to stop her from taking everything and running away with Mark. I had to protect what was left of my life, my money, my dignity, and whatever hope I had left of moving on. In the days that followed, I filed for divorce. The process was brutal: paperwork, court appearances, negotiations. She fought me every step of the way, claiming she deserved half of everything, including our joint savings, which I knew she'd been secretly draining for months. It was a fight, but I was determined. I had the proof of her financial misconduct, and I was ready to fight for what was rightfully mine. The hardest part wasn't the legal battle, it was the emotional toll. I kept asking myself how someone I loved could do this, how she could betray me so completely. It felt like my heart was being ripped apart. In the aftermath, I felt a strange sense of relief mixed with bitterness. I'd lost a lot: trust, my marriage, a chunk of our inheritance, but I was still standing. I realized I'd learned some hard lessons. Never ignore the signs of betrayal, never assume your partner is who they pretend to be, and always protect your assets. I also learned that sometimes the only way to get justice is to fight for it. I was angry, yes, but I was also determined to rebuild my life piece by piece. Looking back, I wish I'd seen the warning signs sooner. I wish I'd been more cautious, more suspicious of her sudden mood swings and secretive behavior. But part of me also feels betrayed that she was able to lie and cheat her way through years of our life together. Still, I'm trying to move forward. I started therapy to deal with the emotional scars. I've put the house on the market and I'm focusing on my job and my kids. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know I won't let her destroy me completely. And honestly, I want to tell anyone reading this: trust your instincts. Keep a close eye on your finances. Because once someone crosses that line, it's hard to come back from the betrayal. I thought I knew my wife, but I was blind. Now I'm just trying to pick up the pieces and learn to trust myself again. The whole experience left me feeling shattered, but also oddly stronger in some ways. I won the legal battle, got my fair share of the joint savings, and managed to stop her from taking everything she wanted. But the emotional scars, those take longer to heal. I spent weeks in a fog, questioning everything about my marriage, my judgment, even my own worth. The betrayal wasn't just about money. She'd lied about who she was, about her feelings, about our entire life together. It was like discovering a stranger had been living with me all these years. One thing I learned: betrayal doesn't just hurt in the moment, it haunts you for a long time. I kept waking up at night, replaying the scenes, trying to understand how someone I loved could do something so cruel. I kept asking myself if I missed the signs, if I was blind or naive. But deep down, I knew I'd given her every chance to be honest, and she chose to lie and cheat. That realization was bitter, but it also freed me from the false hope of fixing it. I understood I couldn't undo what had been done, only learn from it. I also had to confront the fact that I'd been naive about trust. I'd always believed that marriage was about honesty, loyalty, and working through problems together. Turns out, I had to be more cautious, more vigilant. I started paying closer attention to my finances, to her behavior, to the little things that I'd overlooked before. I realized that trust isn't just given, It's earned and maintained through transparency. Once that's broken, it's almost impossible to repair completely. In the months that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life. I threw myself into work, took long walks, and reconnected with friends I'd neglected. I also started therapy, which helped me process the feelings of anger, sadness, and betrayal. I learned that it's okay to feel broken for a while, that healing isn't linear. Sometimes I'd wake up feeling okay, only to be hit with waves of sadness or rage later in the day. It's part of the process, I guess. One of the hardest parts was dealing with the legal aftermath. My ex-wife Laura tried everything to fight me on the divorce and her claims for half of our joint savings. She even hired a lawyer to try to contest the court's decision, claiming she was entitled to more because she sacrificed so much for the marriage. That was laughable, considering the evidence I had of her financial misconduct. But it was exhausting: court dates, negotiations, depositions. All the while, I had to keep reminding myself that I was doing this to protect what was left of my life. And then there was the emotional blow of realizing she was already moving on. I found out she'd bought a new apartment, was planning to start fresh with Mark. She was already trying to erase the damage, pretending like nothing had happened. That stung. It made me feel like I'd been discarded, like a worn-out piece of furniture. But I also knew I couldn't let her define my worth. I had to focus on myself now, on healing, on figuring out what I wanted for my future. Through all this, I learned an important lesson. Betrayal can shatter your world, but it doesn't have to define you. You can rebuild stronger and wiser. I won't lie, I still have moments of pain, anger, and regret. But I also have hope. Hope that someday I'll trust again, that I'll find someone who values honesty and loyalty. And most importantly, I've learned to trust myself, my instincts, my judgment, my ability to get through the worst storms. So if you're reading this and you're going through something similar, here's what I'd tell you. Don't ignore the signs. Trust your gut. Protect your assets. And don't be afraid to fight for what's yours, whether that's your money, your dignity, or your peace of mind. Betrayal hurts, but it also teaches you resilience. And in the end, that resilience is what helps you rebuild a better, stronger life. Looking back, I realize how much this whole ordeal has changed me. I used to believe in fairy tale endings, marriage, trust, happily ever after. But the truth is, life's messy, unpredictable, and sometimes brutal. Betrayal like this can shatter everything you thought was solid, but it also forces you to confront who you really are. I've come to see that strength isn't about never falling apart. It's about picking yourself up when everything's been torn down. I had to learn to forgive myself for trusting her too much, for missing the warning signs, for not seeing the truth sooner. Now I focus on rebuilding my life from the ground up. I've sold the house, moved into a small apartment, and started fresh. I've become more cautious with my money, more aware of the people I let into my life. I still have scars. Those deep wounds of betrayal don't fade easily. But I also have clarity. I know what I want now: honesty, loyalty, and someone who respects me enough not to lie or cheat behind my back. I refuse to settle for anything less. This experience has taught me that no matter how much you love someone, you can't force them to be honest. You can't control their choices or their actions. All you can do is protect yourself, be vigilant, and hold onto your integrity. If someone shows you their true colors, believe them. Don't ignore the signs or make excuses. Because once trust is broken, it's almost impossible to repair, at least in the way you once believed. As I move forward, I carry a lot of pain, but also a new sense of resilience. I've learned to value myself more, to set boundaries, and to never take someone's loyalty for granted. I've become more cautious, yes, but also more hopeful. Hope that someday I'll find a relationship built on honesty and mutual respect, not secrets and lies. I refuse to let her betrayal define my future. Instead, I choose to learn from it, grow stronger, and keep moving forward. To anyone reading this who's going through something similar, know that you're not alone. Betrayal cuts deep, but you're stronger than you think. Trust your instincts, protect your heart, and don't be afraid to walk away if someone isn't treating you right. Life isn't perfect, but it's yours to shape. And no matter how dark the night, there's always the promise of dawn. Keep fighting, keep believing in yourself, and never forget, your worth isn't determined by someone else's actions. It's something you define every day.